Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't. When you picture the Victorian era, maybe you imagine elegant ladies in hoop skirts, top-hatted gentlemen, and candlelit parlours smelling faintly of lavender. But beneath that polished surface lived a collection of customs so odd, so eerie, and so absurd that they make our modern habits like scrolling TikTok in bed seem perfectly reasonable. Before we plunge in, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy these nighttime journeys. And drop a quick comment below, tell me what time it is where you're listening right now. It's always amazing to see who's joining from across the world, whether it's midnight in Melbourne or dawn in Detroit. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft humming background. And let's slip together into tonight's story. Our journey tonight. The weirdest Victorian customs ever practiced. This is not the polite, buttoned-up world of history textbooks. This is the strange underbelly of the 19th century, where people photographed their dead relatives as if they were still alive, where mourning wasn't a private affair but a fashion statement, and where a gentleman might actually buy hair jewellery made from his beloved's actual hair. Victorian life was governed by rules and rituals, rigid codes of etiquette that could suffocate you if you dared to step out of line. But within that framework, people found oddly inventive, sometimes downright bizarre ways to express grief, love, and even humour. Customs that seem shocking, creepy, or simply hilarious to us were once considered normal, respectable, and in some cases, essential. Imagine a world where even your death was carefully staged for public consumption. Families dressed corpses, sat them up for photographs, and mailed those portraits across the country like Christmas cards. Or where a widow was expected to wear black mourning clothes for years, sometimes decades, and to avoid cheerful conversation as if joy itself might dishonour her husband's ghost. It was an age obsessed with appearances, not just fashion and manners, but appearances in the literal sense. Victorians hid rotting teeth with black paint, padded their clothing with wire and whalebone until they couldn't breathe, and swallowed vinegar to keep their skin pale. To them, beauty meant fragility. And fragility meant status. But here's the thing. Beneath all the stiffness, the Victorians were not as prim as we imagine. They were fascinated with death, but also with sex, science, seances, and spiritualism. They lived in an age of industrial progress and deep superstition, a world where you could take a train across England in a day, then stop in the evening for a parlour séance to summon Aunt Mildred from beyond the veil. And tonight, you get to walk among them. You'll wake up in a cramped Victorian bedroom, eat the strange food, endure the bizarre hygiene rituals, wear the suffocating clothes, and take part in the customs that defined this society. So settle in. Breathe a little slower. You're about to spend one long, peculiar day in Victorian England. And trust me, by the end, you'll be grateful to wake up in the 21st century with your phone, your running water, and your soft, ordinary pajamas. This is Victorian life, not as the history books tell it, but as it was lived. Awkward, unsettling, and sometimes unbelievably weird. You wake up to the sound of horses outside, and the deep, rhythmic clanking of a coal cart being dragged across uneven cobblestone. Your nose wrinkles before your eyes even open. The smell hits first. A thick, smoky blend of soot, damp wood, body odour, and something faintly pickled. You can't quite place it, but whatever it is, it's coming from under your bed. As you shift on the mattress, the straw inside rustles and scratches against the coarse linen sheets, and a small cloud of dust and something alive, maybe a flea, maybe your imagination escapes from the edge of the blanket. The pillow is flat as a pancake and smells like someone else's dreams, which weren't good ones. Welcome to your morning in the Victorian era. not as a lord or a lady, but as a perfectly average person, maybe middle class if you're lucky, or working class if fate is feeling spicy. Either way, you're about to discover that nothing in this room has ever heard the word comfortable. Your room is small, narrow, and dim. A single-paned window lets in grey light filtered through weeks of grime. The glass is warped, and the lace curtain hanging in front of it, starched stiff and yellowed at the edges, does little to block the cold draft slipping through the cracks. You can see your breath, and it's September. The wallpaper is peeling in the corners, curling like old bark. You can make out a faded pattern of roses or possibly skulls. The design is just that distressed. Mold blooms quietly in the upper corners, and there's a water stain on the ceiling that vaguely resembles the Virgin Mary, or a surprised duck, depending on your angle. There's no central heating, of course. That luxury is 100 years and 1,000 pounds away. In the corner of the room is a tiny iron fireplace, cold and empty now, its ashpan still full from last night. If you were rich, a maid would have cleared it and lit a morning fire. But you're not rich, you're you, which means you'll be starting the day by freezing slightly to death, and then boiling your own tea water with matches that smell suspiciously like sulfur and disappointment. The chamber pot sits under the bed, a sinister porcelain bowl of last night's decisions. And yes, it's full. The contents have gone tepid. You wonder how long you can put off dealing with it. Not long. You'll need to take it down to the backyard privy later, or worse, if you're in a crowded London tenement, out into the alley where everyone else does the same. The flies are already waiting. You sit up, slowly. Your body protests. Victorian beds may look charming in antique stores, but sleeping on one feels like spooning a hay bale wrapped in sandpaper. Your back aches in ways you didn't know were possible, and your hip bones feel like they've been trying to dig their way to freedom in the night. Your night clothes are made of thick, itchy flannel. They're heavy, stiff, and absolutely not breathable. You're sweating and freezing at the same time, a Victorian specialty. If you're a woman, you're also wearing a nightcap tied under your chin, designed to keep your hair neat and your soul slowly strangle. If you're a man, you might have skipped the cap, and now your scalp is numb from the cold. Either way, you're still exhausted. There is no clock, no soft digital glow. You tell time by the light or the sound of church bells echoing somewhere through the city smog, or if you're particularly unlucky, by the clatter of boots from upstairs, where your landlord's child is already running laps in hard-soled shoes. There's a washstand in the corner with a bowl and pitcher. The water inside is cold, stale, and might contain a drowned spider. No mirror unless you've bought one yourself, and even then, it's likely warped and spotted like a carnival trick. Your reflection blinks back at you with puffy eyes and a vague sense of regret. The floorboards are thin, the walls thinner. You can hear your neighbour coughing violently, and then hawking something unspeakable into a tin. Somewhere beyond that, someone's playing a badly tuned violin or torturing a cat, and downstairs, the cold delivery boy is shouting something that may or may not be English. You try to stand. The floor is ice. Slippers, if you're fancy. Otherwise, it's bare feet on splintered boards until you find your boots or shoes, which are stiff, damp, and smell of mildew and sadness. They've been drying near the hearth for 2 days and still feel like they were pulled from a bog. Let's talk about your furniture. You have a bed, a trunk, and possibly a dresser, but more likely, a wooden crate pretending to be one. No closet. Clothing hangs from pegs or is folded in stacks that double as insulation. Every item you own smells like smoke and dust. And mothballs if you're feeling extravagant. If you're lucky enough to live with family, you're not alone. You're waking up beside a sibling, spouse, or child, because Victorian bedrooms were often shared. If you're unlucky, you're still not alone. That scratching sound in the wall isn't imagination. It's either a rat or a very brave mouse with a god complex. Your mattress is stuffed with straw, horsehair, or wool depending on class. All of these harbor lice. There's no getting around it. You will itch today and tomorrow, and until the invention of indoor plumbing and bug spray. Outside, the city is already alive. Smoke billows from chimney tops. Milkmaids call out their wares. Horses clop along the street, hauling carts full of coal, cabbage, and possibly someone's unfortunate uncle who passed in the night. The air is a blend of smoke, horse manure, and the sharp scent of human sweat that somehow leaks through every stone crack in the city. You haven't even gotten out of your nightclothes, and already your lungs are half full of coal dust. Your eyes sting. Your lips are cracked. Your nose is starting to bleed, gently, like a warning from the air itself. And yet, this is normal. You're not sick. You're just awake in the 1800s. You haven't bathed, dressed, or eaten. The hardest part of your day hasn't even begun, but don't worry. It's about to get much worse. You've survived the night. Sort of. You're awake, vaguely upright, and your feet are firmly planted on the icy, splintered floor of your Victorian bedroom. Congratulations. The worst is not behind you. It's just beginning. The first decision of the morning is a simple one. Do you wash? You'd like to. You'd like to feel fresh and clean and not like a chimney sweep sock drawer. But this is Victorian England. The idea of clean is aspirational. Unless you're upper class, in which case you're reading about this in a diary. Not living it. Hygiene is about managing dirt, not eliminating it. There's no shower. There's no bathtub. There's a jug of water sitting in a porcelain basin on a wooden washstand. The water is cold, not refreshing cold, frostbite cold. This water was drawn from a pump or well the night before and left to sit in a room colder than a meat locker. A film of something. Is it dust? Is it air pollution? Shimmers faintly on the surface. You dip your fingers in. You regret it instantly. If you're brave, or just too smelly to justify skipping again, you splash some onto your face. It stings, not because it's harsh, but because your skin is cracked from coal smoke, wind, and never quite drying off properly. You scrub your face with a square of linen that's only clean because you turned it inside out. Then you move on to the rest of yourself. Maybe you strip down to your shift or undershirt. Maybe not. It's freezing. Modesty and misery go hand in hand in Victorian mornings. You wipe down your underarms, your neck, behind the ears if you're feeling luxurious. The soap is hard, lumpy, and smells faintly of animal fat and old rain. If you're lucky, there's a hint of lavender. If not, it's lie heavy and burns your knuckles. No one expects you to smell good. They just don't want you to smell too bad. And now, your teeth, or what's left of them. Victorian dental care is less care and more damage control. If you're working class, you likely don't own a toothbrush. You might rub your teeth with a cloth dipped in salt or soot. Some people chew twigs, then fray the ends and scrub like a desperate raccoon. Others rinse with vinegar or brandy, which doesn't help your breath, but at least it numbs the pain. Toothpaste, if you've somehow acquired some, is made with chalk, crushed brick, or powdered cuttlefish. It tastes like regret and erosion. Gums bleed. You spit into the basin and wonder which molar is going to be next. There's no deodorant. The Victorian solution to body odor is layers. Cover the smell with more smell. Talcum powder, floral vinegar, rose water, if you're fancy. But most people just accept a general background funk as the cost of being alive. In a city full of open gutters and horse manure, you are not the worst smelling thing on the street. Your hair, well, it's complicated. If you're a man, you might run a comb through it, Maybe add a dab of pomade made from bear fat or macassar oil that makes you smell like a pine tree in morning. If you're a woman, hair is everything. You might spend 20 minutes arranging it, braiding it, pinning it into place, then wrapping it with a cap or bonnet. Washing it? That's a once-a-week event. Maybe once a month. You powder the roots and hope no one gets too close. And then the underlayers. Before breakfast, before tea, before you've had a single moment of joy, you're already wrestling with corsets, petticoats, stockings, drawers, or, if you're a man with stiff collars, itchy wool, and trousers that feel like they were tailored by someone angry at knees. Now comes breakfast. Finally, you stumble down the stairs, hair flattened by your nightcap, lips cracked, wearing clothes that feel like punishment. You follow the scent of something. Is it toast? Is it coal smoke? Is it death? Breakfast in Victorian England is less a meal and more a negotiation. For the poor, it's whatever you have. Stale bread, thin porridge made with water and desperation, maybe a bit of dripping, that's beef fat, if you're lucky. A weak cup of tea that's been reused twice. Sugar, if you can afford it. Milk, maybe, probably not. The milkman's last delivery had the consistency of paint and the smell of spoiled ambition. Eggs, rare. Bacon, a luxury. Meat is a Sunday fantasy. Most mornings, you're eating dry bread with jam that's 70% beet sugar and 30% what was left in the barrel. If you're working class, you might eat standing up in the kitchen. The fire is barely warm. The kettle takes forever to boil. The range leaks smoke. And your cup, it's been cracked since the year before last. You sip anyway. Middle-class families do better. If you live in a nicer house with servants, breakfast is a small ceremony. There might be toast racks, boiled eggs, kippers, salted fish, and soft-boiled tea. But even then, the food is lukewarm, the tea overbrewed, and the silence thick with Victorian repression. And if you're wealthy, well, your breakfast is served in bed, on a tray, with scones, marmalade, poached eggs, possibly champagne. But you're not wealthy, you're hungry, and your bread has a bite mark suspiciously not your own. Let's not forget one of the most Victorian food traditions, digestive tonics. Before the toast, before the tea, you might be expected to swallow a spoonful of bitters, some foul herbal concoction designed to stimulate the bile. It burns, it stings, it may contain laudanum, but everyone insists it's healthy. You chew, you swallow. You wonder if this is what breakfast feels like in purgatory. Then, with your stomach partially lined and your hands smelling faintly of carbolic soap and coal, it's time to clean up. There is no sink, no running water. You pour used wash water out the window or down a drain in the courtyard, where it joins a cheerful stream of chicken blood, grey slop, and your neighbour's forgotten laundry soap. Everything smells, everything smokes, everything leaks, and the day hasn't even really started yet. But don't worry, lunch is only 6 hours away, and it might even come with boiled cabbage. If you're still conscious, by now you've splashed yourself with cold water, eaten something that barely counts as food, and managed not to set yourself on fire trying to light the stove. All that's left is the final act of morning humiliation, getting dressed. Let's start with undergarments, because in Victorian England, layers are life. Not comfort, not fashion, just layers. You do not simply throw on a shirt and go about your day like some scandalous modern beast. No, you must first construct yourself like a cursed doll. If you're a woman, the first layer is the chemise, a plain linen or cotton shift that protects your actual clothes from your actual body. It is your base layer, your defense against sweat, your final moment of fabric kindness before things go very, very wrong. Next come the drawers open-crotched, because buttons in a corseted emergency are not your friend. They're not decorative. They're not comfortable. They exist solely to answer the question, how do we make underwear even less functional? Then it's corset time. You inhale. You brace. You curse softly in Victorian. A corset isn't just tight, it's structural. Steel-boned, front-busked and laced in the back like a boot made of despair. You need help to tighten it. If there's no maid, you do it yourself and hope you don't black out halfway through. The goal, compress the waist, elevate the bust, and sacrifice your internal organs to the gods of posture. And that's just foundation. Now come the petticoats, often more than one. Starched, scratchy, and weighty, like wearing multiple dishcloths made of pain. Over that, the crinoline or cage, an actual wearable structure made from whalebone or steel hoops, designed to puff your skirts into a fashionable dome of inconvenience. Finally, the dress. Bodice, skirt, sleeves, maybe a bustle if it's the 1870 seconds. Fastened with 1,000,000 buttons, all placed where your arms can't reach. You're sweating, you're wheezing, you can't sit down normally, but at least you're presentable. If you're a man, don't get cocky. Your morning misery is only slightly less elaborate. Start with your shirt, stiff, starched, and absolutely not soft. Add a collar so high and tight, it threatens to decapitate you when you look left. Trousers are snug and high-waisted, held up with suspenders that seem determined to bisect your chest. Add a waistcoat because one layer of wool isn't enough, and then a jacket stiff enough to deflect bullets. And then the tie, or the cravat, or the necktie wrapped 3 times around your throat in a style last fashionable during the Napoleonic Wars. Tie it wrong and you're a ruffian. Tie it too tight, and you're unconscious by noon. Now, shoes, if you own them, they're leather, stiff, narrow, and brutal. There is no arch support. Insoles don't exist. Breaking them in means bleeding. Socks are wool and wet, always. Boots require button hooks or sheer violence to put on. Once dressed, you grab your hat because no one leaves the house without headwear. For women, it might be a bonnet tied under the chin like a stylish medieval restraint. For men, it's a bowler, top hat or cap that broadcasts class, rank, and likelihood of syphilis. But now that you're encased in 15 pounds of itchy, breathless, flammable fabric, it's time to admire your shelter if you can still bend your neck to look. Your Victorian home, whether it's a cramped tenement or a terraced townhouse, is not built for comfort. It's built for decorum and coal. Everything smells faintly of it. Your parlour, your bedroom, your bedspread, your lungs. If you're poor, you live in a single room in a shared building. The walls are thin, the ceiling's low. Damp seeps in through brick like it pays rent. Windows are small, grimy, and rattle in the wind. Wallpaper peels like ancient bark. There's no insulation, heat escapes instantly, and the coal fire barely warms anything except the immediate 6 inches in front of it. If you're working class, you might have your own floor. 2 rooms, maybe 3, a kitchen that's really a scullery, a stone sink, a rusty water pump, a coal-fired range that smokes more than it cooks. The air is thick with soot, grease, and anxiety. Your pots are blackened. Your kettle is never clean. Every surface is dark. The furniture is heavy, wooden, and covered in doilies to catch dust you'll never fully remove. The chairs are straight-backed and unfriendly. The curtains are thin and mouldy. Every ornament, and there are many, exists to cover up how miserable it is to live here. If you're middle class, you might have a sitting room, a parlour, a dining room, and no central heating in any of them. You have carpets that never dry properly, a piano that no one plays, shelves of books you haven't read, A hallway lined with stiff coats and gloves dried rigid by the fire, and on every mantel, table and sideboard photographs of dead relatives, because the Victorians loved their dead, really loved them. Death isn't banished to cemeteries. It's in the living room, literally. Mourning portraits, hair jewelry, locks of hair displayed in glass frames, mourning samplers embroidered with sorrow, and maybe, just maybe, a photo of Aunt Eliza taken after she died, posed upright in a chair, eyes painted on her closed lids to make her look lifelike. It's tradition, it's normal, it's horrifying. Bathrooms? Forget it. The toilet, if you have one, is outside, usually a privy in the backyard, shared with neighbors and spiders the size of poultry. You visit with a candle and a prayer. In winter, it's a torture chamber. In summer, it's an open-air biology experiment. Flushing toilets exist, but only for the rich. Everyone else uses chamber pots or open drains. The smell of humanity is never far away. The staircase is narrow. The attic is full of dust and secrets. The cellar floods. The roof leaks. Gaslighting flickers ominously. And fire? Always a threat. Chimneys clog. Curtains ignite. Entire rows of houses burn down from a single overturned candle. But you don't complain, because that would be unseemly. You suffer with dignity, quietly, in formal wear, and when guests arrive, you smile and offer tea, because this smoky, wheezing, drafty prison of etiquette and lace, this is home. You're dressed, you're hungry, you're vaguely clean by Victorian standards, and now it's time to work. Which sounds simple until you realize work in the Victorian era isn't just unpleasant. It's dangerous, back-breaking, soul-eroding survival. This isn't a place where you clock in and get a paycheck. It's a place where you give your body to the system and hope it doesn't break before Thursday. And if you think this is hyperbole, oh no, we're just getting started. Let's say you're working class. You probably are. That means your job, whatever it is, starts early. As in before sunrise early. You're up while the sky's still black, the air sharp with coal smoke and frost. You eat a slice of bread or leftover porridge. Kiss your family goodbye, if they're awake, and step into the street, hoping your boots hold together long enough to earn another week's wages. You're a factory worker? Good. That means you'll spend the next 12 to 16 hours in a building so loud you can't hear your own thoughts. The air is thick with cotton dust, or coal soot, or metal shavings, depending on your trade. The machinery is enormous, unguarded, and entirely unsympathetic. If you get your hand caught, you don't get workers' comp. You get a stump and a warning not to bleed on the product. You are replaceable. Everyone is. Children work too, lots of them. They're hired because they're small and cheap. They crawl under machines to clean them while the gears are still turning. If you're a child in the mills, you lose fingers before you lose teeth. If you survive long enough to grow, you might graduate to being a piecer, stitching together strands of thread while standing for 15 hours straight. A fun bonus. You'll go deaf by 40 from the constant mechanical screeching. Maybe you're a coal miner. Excellent. Welcome to darkness. Your shift begins with a crawl literally into the mine shaft, carrying a tin lamp and the hope you don't spark an explosion with your breath. You're ankle deep in filth, breathing coal dust with every breath. You haul carts, swing picks, and pray the tunnel doesn't collapse. If it does, no one's coming. You'll be found next spring. Maybe. Or you're a chimney sweep. Even better, you start at sunrise and work until your joints give out. You're smaller boy, maybe 10 or 12, and your job is to wriggle up inside pitch-black flues, scraping out soot with a brush tied to a rope. The creosote burns your skin. The soot fills your lungs. Sometimes you get stuck. Sometimes you fall. Sometimes the master sweep lights the fire too early to encourage you to finish faster. If you don't die of cancer by 30, you retire early. Or you just collapse on the job and get buried under someone's stairs. Or maybe you're a maid. That means you start before everyone else, often 4:30 a.m. Your first job? Light the household fires. You crawl from room to room, carrying scuttles of coal and kindling, trying not to choke on smoke or burn your eyebrows off. Then you scrub the grates, polish the fenders, beat the rugs, shake out the linens, fetch water, empty chamber pots, starch collars, clean boots, serve breakfast, dust everything, stay silent. And make sure the drawing room smells like lavender instead of mildew and crushed dreams. And the moment your employer rings that little silver bell, you run. Maids are not seen. They float through the house like unpaid ghosts, fixing everything, absorbing everyone's wrath, and sleeping in the attic on a bed made of hay and heartbreak. Maybe you're a street seller. You wake at dawn and walk the city barefoot, pushing a cart filled with anything that might turn a penny: eels, bootlaces, hot pies, stale muffins, sewing thread, broken umbrellas. You call out your wares, hoarse from shouting, until someone buys or tells you to shut up. You're working in rain, fog, frost, and smog, thick enough to chew. If you're lucky, you make enough to eat. If not, you drink vinegar wine and fall asleep in an alley. Perhaps you're a pure finder, a glamorous Victorian job that involves collecting dog feces. Yes, dog feces. You wander the streets with a bucket and a stick, scraping up what the city's stray population generously leaves behind. Tanners use it to soften leather. You sell it by the scoop. If you're fast and thick-skinned, you make a living. If you're not, well, there are always the sewers. Or you're a mudlark scavenging the Thames at low tide, searching for coins, nails, bones, and the occasional dead thing with jewelry still attached. The river stinks. It's poisonous, and it tries to kill you daily. You come home soaked, freezing, diseased, and still broke. Let's say you're a clerk. That's better, right? You wear a stiff collar and sit at a desk, copying numbers or letters for 12 hours straight by gaslight. You get ink stains on your cuffs, and your eyesight goes by 35. Your spine bends. Your fingers cramp, and you do not, under any circumstances, correct your employer. If you're too slow, you're fired. If you're too fast, you're resented. If you sneeze too loudly, you're reprimanded. Women? They're working too. Some are matchstick girls, dipping splints into white phosphorus in unventilated factories. Their hair falls out. Their teeth rot. Their jaws dissolve from the inside out, literally. It's called phossy jaw. The pain is indescribable. The company says it's a personal hygiene problem. Others are laundresses, boiling sheets over open fires, in basements thick with steam. Or they're seamstresses, bent over needles, 14 hours a day. Or they take in washing, beat rugs, scrub stairs, raise 10 children, and still manage to bake bread before sunrise. And at the very bottom the streets, prostitution isn't just common, it's everywhere. The average age? 17. Sometimes younger. You're not paid in money. You're paid in food, in shelter, in not freezing to death in an alley. The men who visit you call you wicked. The society that created you calls you invisible. There are no unions, no safety nets, no protections. If you're hurt, you suffer. If you fall ill, you die. If you die in public, someone might take your boots before the cart comes for your body. And yet, this is normal. This is the structure. This is the proud, upright, God-fearing Victorian world, built on backs and blood and bone. The newspapers talk about empire. The novels talk about virtue. The parlour songs sing of honour and hope. But you are. The reason the streets stay clean, the fires stay lit, the letters get posted, and the upper class stays powdered and polished. And now, with your feet blistered, your fingers blackened, and your stomach growling again, it's time for your one break of the day. 10 minutes, maybe 15. If the overseer isn't watching, just enough time to chew a crust of bread, sip cold tea, and think not about the future. You can't afford that. Just about making it to sundown, you're bone tired. Your hands are cracked. You've worked through cold, smoke, and back-breaking labor. But before your day can continue, you must mind your soul, because in Victorian England, your spiritual hygiene is just as important as your physical one. And just like everything else in this era, it's complicated. Victorian society appears rigid, moral, and deeply religious on the surface. Church attendance is high. Sunday is sacred. Bibles sit on every bookshelf. But underneath that pious exterior lies something far more peculiar. Victorians are not just religious, they are terrified. Not just of hell, though, that's certainly on the menu, but of spirits, omens, curses, mysterious illnesses, and misfortunes that might be punishment for something. What exactly is often unclear, but rest assured, you've probably done it. At the center of everything is the church: Anglican, Catholic, Methodist, Baptist. It depends on where and who you are. The sermons are long, the pews are hard, the hymns are solemn. You wear your best clothes, even if they itch. You don't smile. That's considered suspicious. And you don't slouch. That's practically blasphemy. And yet, despite all this formality, people cling to rituals and fears that the Bible doesn't quite explain. Let's start with death, the Victorian obsession of choice. You're told to live a moral life, but you're reminded daily that death is coming. It's coming fast. And it's coming with a full guest list. Children die. Mothers die. Coal workers die. You can die of a cough, a draft, or a bad oyster. And when death arrives, it doesn't sneak in, it dominates. A good death is everything. You must be prepared, spiritually alert, and ideally surrounded by family while you whisper a final prayer. If you die unconfessed, in sin, or heaven forbid while doing something improper, the consequences are eternal. People keep deathbeds as serious places, not just for dying, but for reflecting, repenting, and final warnings. Your last words are recorded. Your posture is arranged. Your eyelids are closed with coins. And if you die suddenly, panic. Immediate suspicion that something was spiritually wrong. And then there are the funerary customs. Elaborate, strict, and often bizarre. After someone dies, clocks in the house are stopped at the exact moment of death. Mirrors are covered so the spirit doesn't get trapped or confused and remain in the home. Curtains are drawn. A black ribbon is tied to the door, not for style, but as a warning. Death has visited here. The body is washed, dressed, and laid out in the parlor, the same parlor where tea was served last week. Neighbors come to pay respects. Some even take locks of hair, not morbid, but sentimental. The hair is often braided into mourning jewelry, tucked into lockets, or made into brooches. A literal piece of the departed, worn close to the heart. And then comes the photograph. Yes, post-mortem photography. It was common, popular even. A child, a parent, a sibling dressed in their best, posed with eyes painted open, or lying in lifelike repose. They're photographed sitting upright, sometimes with living family members who are doing their absolute best not to blink. The result, a hauntingly still image where only one person is actually still, because death isn't the end. Not to the Victorians. That's where spiritualism comes in. It starts in the parlors of middle-class homes, a quiet gathering, a candle or two, a round table, hands joined, and someone whispering to the beyond. Seances were the evening entertainment in many households. Mediums were invited, spirits were summoned, messages were interpreted through knocks, table tapping, or if the ghost was particularly dramatic, full possession. Newspapers covered popular mediums like celebrities. Some people attended seances with the same regularity they attended church. The Queen herself, Queen Victoria, is rumoured to have dabbled in it, desperate to contact her beloved Albert after his death. If it was good enough for Her Majesty, it was good enough for the parlours of South London. Skeptics existed, of course, but so did believers, many of them. These weren't fringe ideas, they were mainstream. Entire magazines were published dedicated to ghost sightings, spectral photography, and communication with the dead. And it wasn't just the wealthy. Working-class families engaged in home rituals, lighting candles, whispering to lost children, placing trinkets beneath pillows to attract dreams or visions. And yet at the same time, Victorians feared witchcraft. Yes, even in the late 1800s, belief in witches persisted. Not broomstick riding, hex-casting caricatures, but old women who lived alone, knew herbs, or gave someone the evil eye. If your cow died, if your child fell ill, if your bread didn't rise, someone might be to blame. You might keep a lucky charm to ward off a curse, a horseshoe over the door, a poppet in the drawer. Some even carried dried toads or wore iron nails around the neck, because who needs logic when you have folklore? And let's not forget omens. Victorians read signs into everything. A bird tapping on your window, someone's going to die, dropping a knife, company's coming. 2 tea leaves floating in your cup, that's marriage or murder, depending on the angle. Dreams were analysed. Candles watched for flickers. Dogs howling at night, bad omen. Church bells ringing on a still day, terrible omen. A funeral passing without rain, the next death will be quick. And woe betide you if you spilled salt and forgot to throw it over your shoulder. Superstition and scripture lived side by side. You could recite the Lord's Prayer and still flinch at a black cat. You could kneel in a pew and still nail a rabbit's foot to the doorframe. You could donate to the poor and still avoid walking under a ladder because your cousin did and died within the week. Even medical practices had spiritual overtones. Doctors used electrical treatments to shock illness away. Nurses whispered prayers. Midwives chanted during births. And every major illness was interpreted as both a physical condition and a spiritual test. The poor suffered more obviously, but the belief was suffering brought you closer to God. Pain was a purification, grief a sacred rite, and joy was dangerous, prideful, potentially sinful. Best to stay humble, best to suffer quietly and give thanks anyway. Because behind every frown, every folded hand, every tightly buttoned collar was a deep, ancient fear. Fear of punishment, fear of hell, fear of the dead returning, fear of doing anything that would bring shame, curses, or condemnation down upon your household. And so you went to church, you whispered to spirits, you watched the sky for omens, and wore black for a year after your mother died. You did all of it because everyone did. Because in the Victorian mind, belief wasn't just personal, it was survival. And tonight, as the gaslights flicker, the fog rolls in, and the wind rattles the windows like fingernails on glass, you understand why. Because in this world of sickness, silence, and secrets, faith, fear, and superstition are often the only things keeping you safe. You've survived work, barely. Your spine feels like it's trying to escape through your skin. Your fingers are permanently smudged with soot or ink or fish guts. And now, mercifully, it's time to eat. Let's begin with dinner, which for working-class Victorians is typically the one real meal of the day, if you're lucky. You step inside your tenement room or modest flat. The air is thick with the smell of boiled cabbage. Not cooked, boiled. Always boiled. The scent clings to the curtains, your clothes, your soul. Cabbage is cheap, filling, and guaranteed to make every room smell like wet socks and regret. Tonight's meal might be stew, which is a generous term. It's a bubbling pot of potatoes, carrots, onions, maybe a turnip, and some mystery meat, which might be beef, might be horse, might be don't ask. It's been simmering all day, possibly in the same water you washed in this morning. No spices, just salt, if you've got it. Pepper? A luxury. Herbs? That's what the rich use to cover the taste of actual food. You eat with a spoon from a shared bowl. The bread is stale. You dip it anyway. If you're middle class, your dinner is a bit more structured courses. Cutlery, servants, if you can afford them. But don't let the silverware fool you. The food still isn't great. Victorian middle-class meals are elaborate, but not necessarily enjoyable. Overcooked meats. Boiled vegetables until they're the consistency of guilt. Jellied things that should never have been jellied. Mock turtle soup made with calf's head. Aspic. So much aspic. If you can picture it, the Victorians probably encased it in gelatin and called it elegant. And then there's dessert, spotted dick, treacle pudding, suet dumplings, cakes made with lard and beef fat and dried fruit that's more pit than pulp. Everything is brown, sticky, and vaguely traumatic. Your drink options? Let's begin with the obvious. Water is not safe. If you're in the city, the water might come from a public pump, the same one used by your neighbour's laundry tub, the butcher's bucket, and a dog that drowned there 3 weeks ago. Germ theory is still being debated, but your stomach already knows the truth. You boil the water if you can. If not, you don't drink it. Instead, you turn to tea boiled, strong, black, and consumed by the gallon. Not because it's trendy, because boiling kills the stuff that kills you. Children drink it. The elderly drink it. The sick drink it. The British Empire is held together by over-steeped tannins. If you need something stronger, there's beer. Victorian beer is dark, warm, and flat. It's considered safer than water and often consumed with meals even by children. A low-alcohol small beer might be given to factory workers at lunch. Why? Because drunk workers are still faster than dead ones. And then there's gin. Gin, the drink that built empires and destroyed livers. In the early part of the century, gin was cheap, accessible, and a full-blown crisis. Known as Mother's Ruin, it fueled poverty, crime, and the kind of emotional damage that can only be described through Victorian poetry. By your time, regulations have cut down on the worst excesses, but it's still there in taverns, in boarding houses, in every alley where someone needs to forget they have 7 children and a foot infection. Feeling fancy? There's sherry, port, Madeira, or claret, but only if you're wealthy enough to own a drawing room. And if you're at a dinner party, you must drink in moderation. Excessive merriment is frowned upon. Unless you're in the country, then it's practically mandatory. But how do Victorians entertain themselves beyond the thrill of not dying during dinner? Let's begin with the pub. The pub is not a bar. It's not a nightclub. It's the living room of the working class. It's where you go to drink, yes, but also to meet friends, sing songs, read the paper, and occasionally get punched in the face. Victorian pubs are loud, smoky, dimly lit, and packed with people who've had enough of life's nonsense. There's laughter. There's arguing. There's betting. There's someone playing a fiddle badly in the corner. And sometimes, if the night's going well, there's a brawl involving a chimney brush and a chair. For the ladies, tea socials are the thing. But don't be fooled. These are less about sipping tea and more about strategic social combat. Who's wearing black too soon after her husband died? Who dared serve store-bought sponge? Who brought their own jam, a clear insult to the hostess? These are not tea parties. They are polite duels with biscuits. If you're lucky, your town has a music hall, a raucous, low-cost venue where comedians, dancers, jugglers, and bawdy singers perform to packed crowds. The songs are catchy, the jokes are just shy of obscene, and the atmosphere is part circus, part riot. Some of the acts are truly talented. Others are energetic. Either way, you cheer, you boo. You drink warm ale from a chipped mug and shout along to songs with titles like My Old Man Said Follow the Van or I'm Henry VIII, I Am. It's chaotic, joyful, and very possibly full of fleas. For the more refined, there are theatres, lectures, and salons. Plays by Shakespeare, readings by Dickens. Speeches about phrenology, moral progress, or the dietary benefits of arrowroot. If you're middle class, you may even host such events. Guests arrive in their best silks. The furniture is rearranged. The piano is polished. Someone performs a trembling violin solo while everyone stares at a wall. Then there's the parlour games. The Victorian equivalent of Cards Against Humanity, but with more rules and fewer boundaries. Popular games include charades, but with dramatic flair and lots of sighing, forfeits, where you do something embarrassing if you fail a task, and blind man's bluff, which is just tag but inside, and often ends in someone knocking over a priceless vase. For the more spiritually inclined, there's always the seance, candles, table tapping, messages from the beyond. It's both entertainment and therapy, a way to grieve, to connect, and to freak out your aunt. It's not unusual for a Friday night to include cake, cards, and a medium, channeling your dead grandfather who still insists you marry the grocer's daughter. Outdoors, there are fairs complete with acrobats, puppet shows, and roasted chestnuts. If you're in the countryside, there's dancing on the green, Morris men, and enough cider to make you forget your third cousin tried to court you last week. In winter, skating. In summer, promenading. Always promenading. Walking slowly in circles, wearing your best hat while pretending not to notice your future spouse loitering near the bandstand. And if all else fails, you go home, light a candle, and read by gaslight until your eyes throb, or you write a letter, or you mend socks, or you stare at the fire and contemplate whether that stew was actually beef. Because sometimes the best Victorian entertainment is just surviving the day, with your dignity and your shoelaces intact. You've survived the workday, you've eaten your questionable stew, you've avoided dying in a tavern brawl or from inhaling your neighbour's morning perfume. But something's wrong. You feel it in your throat. A tightness, a tickle. Maybe your head aches. Maybe your stomach turns. Maybe your child is coughing again, and not the normal kind of cough. The kind that keeps you up at night, counting breaths and prayers. This is Victorian England, which means one thing above all. Death is never far. It waits in the lungs, in the water, in the whispers. And no one is ever truly healthy. The average Victorian lives surrounded by disease, not just illness, but the constant threat of it. A sore throat can turn into scarlet fever. A bad cut becomes gangrene. A simple cold might end in the kind of fever that leaves you deaf, blind, or dead. And most of the time, you don't know what's coming. You just wake up one morning and you're sweating through your sheets, or your child is. The fear is baked into life. Every home has seen it. Every family has buried someone too young. Most people you know are missing siblings or children. or a parent lost to one of the many silent monsters that roam the streets with polite Victorian name. Consumption, that's tuberculosis, and it's everywhere. It spreads quietly, through breath, through touch, through crowded rooms where coal smoke hides the real danger. The symptoms are deceptively poetic. Pale skin, bright eyes, a gentle cough. But the reality is far uglier. Blood on the handkerchief, ribs showing through the skin, entire families infected, one by one. It kills slowly, elegantly even. So slowly, in fact, that the Victorians romanticize it, especially when it strikes women. A consumptive beauty is delicate, tragic, angelic. Her suffering is aesthetic. Her death, a spectacle. Then there's cholera. Cholera is not poetic. Cholera is sudden, violent. It strikes from contaminated water, the very pump you drink from, the bucket your child plays near. You go from healthy to dead in under a day. Vomiting, diarrhea, dehydration so extreme your skin turns blue. People collapse in the streets. In some places they're buried by nightfall. Doctors argue about the cause. Miasma. Some say bad air. The smell of rot, of waste, of poverty. They walk through the slums with handkerchiefs soaked in vinegar, convinced that breathing in the stink will kill them. But a few doctors, brave, radical, mocked, suggest it's the water. And they're right. But germ theory is still young, and many resist the idea that the invisible could be deadly. After all, that would mean the problem isn't the poor themselves, but the systems that trap them. And then, of course, there's typhoid, which rides in on dirty food, unwashed hands, unclean milk, fever, rash, delirium. It spreads through families like wildfire. You can catch it from your own dinner plate, from your own maid, and by the time you realize what's happening, it's too late. Other favorites include whooping cough, which sounds cute but isn't, diphtheria, which suffocates children as a grey membrane forms in their throat, measles, which can leave you blind, smallpox, which leaves you scarred if you live, and rickets, from a lack of sunlight and vitamin D, twisting your bones into shapes that shouldn't be possible. And what does medicine do to help? Well, let's start with the doctors. Victorian doctors range from brilliant innovators to enthusiastic amateurs with impressive facial hair. Some are trained, others just decided to become doctors. A few attend lectures. Fewer still practice antisepsis. Surgery is done without gloves, without masks, and with tools that haven't been cleaned since the last patient who, let's be honest, probably died. Bleeding is still common. You have a fever? Let's drain your blood. You're pale and weak? Let's drain your blood. You're perfectly healthy? Just a bit off balance. Let's drain your blood, just in case. Leeches are applied liberally for headaches, infections, fevers, bad moods. If your doctor owns a jar of them, you're getting leeches whether you like it or not. Then there's laudanum, the Victorian miracle cure, made from opium and alcohol. Laudanum is sold over the counter for everything. Toothaches, insomnia, diarrhea, coughs, hysteria, teething, women's troubles, infant restlessness. It is soothing, addictive, and very, very fatal. Every medicine chest contains it. Every family uses it. You measure it in drops for adults, for children, for babies. Yes, babies. Other medicines include arsenic, for vitality and pale skin, mercury, for syphilis, turpentine, for coughs, chloroform, for difficult patients, and castor oil, for everything. If you're rich, your doctor arrives by carriage with polished boots and a gentle cough of his own. If you're poor, you go to the charity hospital, a place of screams, sawdust, and prayers. Surgery is brutal. Even with chloroform, if it's available, it's often performed without anesthesia. Amputations are common. Infection is assumed. The phrase surgical strike means hacking off a limb fast enough that the patient doesn't scream for more than a minute. There is no penicillin, no antibiotics, no vaccines for most diseases. A paper cut can kill you, a childbirth can kill you, a bad tooth can kill you. And if it doesn't, the treatments might. Pregnancy, by the way, is terrifying. There are no reliable contraceptives. Every birth is a risk. Midwives help. Some are skilled, others guess. Doctors intervene if things go badly, but often too late. Puerperal fever, childbed fever, is rampant because no one washes their hands. Many women die bringing life into the world, and those who survive are told it's their sacred duty to do it again. Death is so common, it has an etiquette. You grieve in stages, each with its own costume. Black crepe, jet jewelry, mourning rings. Your sorrow is not private, it is performed. A widow might wear mourning for 2 years. A child, 6 months. There are rules for when you may wear grey, or lavender, or resume social calls. Victorian mourning is a job, and everyone is watching to see if you do it right. Children grow up beside death. They attend funerals, sleep in rooms where siblings once lived. They know the sound of a death rattle, the scent of carbolic soap, the look of their mother's face when she hears coughing at night. And through it all, the fear, the fever, the funeral's life continues. Because it must. People go to work, knowing today might be their last healthy one. They marry young, they raise families, they drink tea laced with laudanum and whisper prayers at bedside tables. They cling to faith, to ritual, to superstition, because that's all they have. And when someone finally passes, the family gathers. The clock is stopped, the mirrors are veiled, and the photographer arrives to capture one final image, a memory made still and haunting. In a world where science is uncertain and suffering is expected, the Victorians live with death not as a shadow, but as a constant companion. It sits at the dinner table. It sleeps in the nursery. It waits in the lungs of everyone you love. And yet, somehow, you keep going because you have to. The home, we are told, is the heart of Victorian society. A sacred haven, a place of virtue, family, and moral refinement. That's the story, at least. But if you happen to live in a Victorian home, especially as a woman or child, you might describe it differently. You might say it's a place of labor, silence, expectation, and sacrifice. A place where affection is whispered and obedience is shouted. Where a child is seen and not heard, and a woman's worth is measured in patience, petticoats, and perfectly boiled potatoes. Let's begin with women. If you are one, your entire life has been mapped out since birth, not with opportunity, but with duty. Whether you are working class or upper crust, your identity is shaped by how well you embody the ideal of the angel in the house. You are expected to be gentle, modest, nurturing, and above all, invisible outside the family circle. Marriage is not a milestone. It is your mission. Your education, if you receive one, teaches you music, sewing, French, and how to fall silent when men speak. You learn how to pour tea, how to smile without showing too many teeth, and how to faint gracefully. If you're poor, education ends early. If it happens at all, replaced by housework, laundry, or factory shifts. But no matter your class, the end goal is the same. Marry well, then vanish into your husband's name like ink in water. As a Victorian wife, your legal identity is absorbed into your husband's. You have no right to your own property, your own income, or even your own children. The law refers to this as coverture. Poetic, isn't it? Like being wrapped in something soft. In reality, it means you disappear. He cheats? Accept it. He drinks? Look the other way. He beats you? That's a private matter. You speak up? hysterical. You cry, weak. You don't cry, cold. Even childbirth, the most dangerous event in a woman's life, is something you're expected to face with dignity and silence. Screaming during labor is frowned upon. Death during labor, tragically common. Pain relief is controversial. Queen Victoria famously used chloroform during delivery, sparking moral debates across Britain. Because how dare a woman seek comfort? And yet women persist. They keep households running with little rest and no thanks. They cook, clean, manage servants or are the servants, mend clothing, nurse the sick, educate the children, and make it all look effortless. They endure corsets, cracked hands, and crushing social expectations, all while remembering to pass the sugar before the milk, because that's what separates a lady from a cautionary tale. Widowhood offers slightly more freedom if you survive childbirth, infection, and your husband's financial mistakes. A wealthy widow can own property, make decisions, but she must dress in black for at least a year. No bright colors, no smiling, and certainly no dancing unless she's ready to be judged by every bonnet-wearing busybody in town. Now let's talk about children. They are not cherished innocents. Not exactly. They are small, dirty, functional extensions of the family economy. If you're a child in Victorian England, your childhood ends the moment you can carry a coal bucket or hold a mop. Rich children have nannies, governesses, tutors. They are dressed like tiny adults and paraded like accessories, but they are still expected to be quiet, obedient, and emotionally distant. Affection is rare. Discipline is constant. Bedtime stories are moralistic sermons with illustrations of hell. If you are poor, your childhood is even shorter and more dangerous. You might start work at age 5, in mines, in factories, as chimney sweeps, as pickpockets, as match girls with phosphorus saws eating into your jaw. You're underfed, undereducated, overworked. If you're lucky, your parents try to protect you. If not, well, the world has already decided what you're worth. And it's not much. Play? That's for the rich. Toys? Maybe a wooden doll or a hoop and stick. Books? Only if someone teaches you to read, which they might not. Childhood? A concept. A luxury. A word that means nothing when your hands are already blistered by age 7. And yet, in between the hardship, there are glimpses of love. A mother brushing lice from her daughter's hair by candlelight, whispering lullabies passed down through generations. A father sneaking a heel of bread into his son's coat pocket before he heads to the dock. Siblings curled together under threadbare blankets for warmth, giggling over a joke they'll never share aloud in public. These are the quiet acts of tenderness that survive under the weight of the era, the ones not written in etiquette books, but lived in the shadows. Now imagine the family unit, a fragile, overburdened structure. In working-class homes, space is scarce. Entire families sleep in one room. A curtain might separate parents from children, or it might not. Privacy is a concept, not a reality. You know each other's coughs, each other's smells, each other's secret. Fathers work long hours, often in brutal conditions. When they're home, they're tired, short-tempered, or drunk. Domestic violence is common, rarely discussed. The mother is expected to mediate, soothe, serve, and never speak too loudly. And when tragedy comes, as it often does, the family tightens. A funeral is followed by more silence. A black armband. A child asking why their sibling isn't waking up. A mother not answering. And what of orphans? There are many. Parents die young. Illness, accidents, poverty. Or they abandon their children at workhouses, unable to feed them. The child ends up in an institution sleeping in rows, fed from troughs. dressed in uniforms meant to erase their individuality. Some are lucky. They're adopted, apprenticed, given a second chance. Others are not. The Victorian ideal says the family is sacred. The father provides. The mother nurtures. The children obey. But real life is messier, harder, sadder. And yet again, it continues. Families find joy in small things. A warm loaf of bread, a day without fever, a letter from a cousin, a birthday marked with a single sweet. There is laughter, there is resilience, there is that impossible human instinct to love, even in the bleakest conditions. Because in this world, where death is constant, food is scarce, and expectations are crushing, love, in whatever form it takes, is still the thing that holds families together. So you tuck your child in, or your sibling, or your spouse, and hope tomorrow brings more than just survival. You hope for one more day, one more meal, one more moment where no one coughs. And in that moment, however brief, you are rich. It's now late afternoon in Victorian England. You're exhausted. Not the kind of tired that a nap will fix the deep, bone-hollow fatigue that comes from a lifetime of pushing against a society that never moves. You've worked, you've served, you've swallowed your hunger and your opinions. But even now, as the sun lowers behind the soot-stained rooftops, your day is far from over. Because this society isn't just physically hard, it's socially brutal. In Victorian England, your place is everything. And God help you if you forget it. This isn't just about money. It's about class, that complex, invisible force that defines where you stand, who you speak to, how you dress, how you walk, and even how you hold your tea. And it starts from birth. If you're born poor, you stay poor. The factory child is not meant to become a shopkeeper. The shopkeeper is not meant to become a gentleman. There are rules unspoken, but unbreakable, and stepping out of line can cost you everything. Let's say you're a maid. You've worked since sunrise. You've ironed your employer's drawers and dusted the piano legs with a cloth in your teeth. You're tired, but you must be cheerful. The mistress of the house calls you dear, but never meets your eyes. She reads etiquette books on Christian charity, while you polish her shoes with rags from your dead sister's apron. You sleep in the attic. You eat in the scullery. You must enter rooms silently and leave even more quietly. You must never, ever be noticed unless something has gone wrong. And if something has gone wrong, if silver goes missing, or a child cries in the night, or the dog gets sick, it's your fault, whether it is or not. There is no justice for servants. There is only silence, dismissal, or disgrace. Now, let's step outside. The streets are full. The factories are closing. The pubs are warming up. But even in the open air, your place in society follows you like a shadow. Let's say you're a man working class, and you make the mistake of looking a gentleman in the eye. Too long, too direct. Maybe you didn't step aside fast enough on the pavement. He sneers. Maybe he says something. Maybe he calls a constable. Maybe he spits near your boot. You clench your fists, but you say nothing. Because if you speak up, you're aggressive. If you protest, you're a dangerous element. And if you fight back, you're going to prison. Because the police don't exist to protect you. They exist to protect order. The Metropolitan Police Force, newly formed, shiny in their blue uniforms, walk with clubs and moustaches and a deep sense of authority. They are not your friends. They are not community safety officers. They are enforcers of class boundaries. They patrol working-class neighborhoods with suspicion. They break up gatherings, silence protests, arrest drunkards, round up vagrants. If you're homeless, you're a criminal. If you're drunk, you're dangerous. If you're poor, you're already guilty. And heaven help you if you're a woman alone. Let's say you're walking home from work. You're respectable. Your dress is plain. You keep your eyes down. But a man approaches. He's rich or thinks he is. He calls to you. You ignore him. He follows. You keep walking. He grabs your arm. Now it's your fault. He says you enticed him. You must be a prostitute. Why else would you be out after dark? No respectable woman walks alone. That's what the court will say if it even goes to court. More likely you're dismissed, or ruined, or simply disappear from the record, like so many others. Because Victorian society doesn't believe women, it protects their reputation. As long as you stay quiet, keep working, and don't draw attention to yourself, you're fine. Until you're not. Let's talk about tenements. Crumbling, overcrowded buildings stacked high with human misery. One toilet for 30 people. One water pump for a whole block. Rats that swagger through the hallways like they pay rent. There's no privacy, no safety. Domestic violence echoes through thin walls. Babies cry, men shout, women scream, and everyone pretends not to hear, because what can they do? And yet, here's the irony. Respectability is everything. No matter how poor you are, you're expected to act proper. Keep your clothes mended. Keep your voice down. Teach your children manners, even if you can't feed them. Because once you lose respectability, you're lost. If you're a woman, that means chastity, humility, and obedience. If you're a man, it means hard work, restraint, and knowing your place. Fall short, and you're called a degenerate, a disgrace, a burden on the empire. And then there's the law, slow, expensive, and always on the side of those with powdered wigs. Steal a loaf of bread, 6 months hard labor. Pick a pocket, you might be hanged. Get into a fight in a tavern, transportation to Australia, accused of being a common scold. Fines, jail, public shaming. But if you're wealthy, you embezzle funds, that's a scandal. You abuse your servant, a misunderstanding. You get drunk in public, boys will be boys. The law doesn't just punish crime, it punishes poverty, and the punishment doesn't stop with prison. There are workhouses, institutions meant to reform the poor by making them suffer for every crust of bread. Families are separated, food is sparse, labor is endless. The system is designed to be so unbearable that you'll do anything to avoid returning. It is not a safety net, it's a warning. And then there are the institutions, asylums, orphanages, reform schools, places where those who don't fit are sent. The mad, the disabled, the defiant, the inconvenient. Once you're in, you may never leave, and no one will question it, because this is a society built on silence. You don't speak out. You don't rise up. You survive by staying small, staying quiet, and staying in your place. Unless, of course, you're part of the growing underbelly, the radicals, the reformers, the socialists, the suffragettes. They meet in hidden rooms, whisper plans, print illegal pamphlets. They believe in change, in education, in votes for women, in labor unions. They are watched, hunted, jailed, but their voices grow because the cracks are forming, the factories are burning, the children are marching, the newspapers are asking questions. Not yet, but soon. But for now, for you, the day isn't done. You step back into the street. A chimney sweep shuffles past, black as ash. A flower seller limps by, one eye swollen shut. A constable eyes a boy too closely. And above it all, the church bells chime as the city exhales a plume of smoke into the evening sky. You clutch your coat tighter, adjust your hat, and keep walking. Careful not to stand out, careful not to stare, because in Victorian England, there are many ways to die, but one of the most dangerous is being noticed. The sun is gone. It slips behind the horizon with no ceremony, no warmth, and no promise of return. What little light was left bounces off grimy window panes and fog-thick streets, before fading into the kind of darkness that feels older than the city itself. This is not modern night. This is Victorian night, heavy, damp, and crawling with dread. The streets change first. During the day, they're crowded with coal carts, hawkers, coughing children, and the churn of ceaseless labor. But at night, they empty like lung. Gas lamps flicker to life, struggling to push back the gloom. Their light is dim, yellow, and inconsistent, more shadow than flame. In poor neighborhoods, many streets don't have lamps at all, or if they do, the lamps are unlit. No one pays to light the roads of the forgotten. You walk quickly, always. You don't wander after dark, you don't dawdle, you don't make eye contact, because the shadows are full of people you don't want to meet, and people you'll never see again. Let's be clear, night is dangerous. For everyone, every class, every age, but especially for the poor, especially for the women, especially for anyone walking alone. You could be robbed, mugged, assaulted, thrown into the gutter for the contents of your coin purse, which holds more dust than shillings. And if it happens, no one will help. No one will intervene, because no one wants to be the next victim. If you're a woman, any woman, your reputation might not survive the walk home, even if you do. Strangers assume the worst. Are you working the streets? Are you drunk? Are you alone on purpose? If you're a man and poor, the constables might stop you. Not to help, to accuse. Why are you out? What are you carrying? Do you have a license for that cart, that knife, that face? And yet, you walk anyway, because you have to. Maybe you're returning from work. Maybe from the pub. Maybe you are out looking for someone who never came home. You step carefully over cobblestones slick with refuse. The air smells like coal smoke, rotting produce, and the sour tang of 1,000 unwashed bodies behind tenement walls. Somewhere, a baby cries. Somewhere else, a scream is muffled before it finishes forming. And above you, chimneys belch smoke into a sky so thick with smog you can't even see the stars. But it's not just crime you fear. It's not just the pickpockets, the drunks, the constables, the gangs of boys with bricks in their pockets and laughter in their throats. You fear fire. Gas lamps hiss dangerously. Candles flicker behind paper-thin walls. Chimneys clog with soot. One overturned oil lamp can turn an entire block into a funeral pyre. And there is no 911, no fire trucks, no sprinkler systems, no alarms. If flames break out, your only hope is a bucket chain of neighbors and a prayer shouted at the heaven. And then there's illness, which feels sharper at night. The cough that started yesterday becomes a rasp. The fever becomes a delirium. The child who looked tired at dinner is now burning up. Eyes glassy, breath shallow. There is no night nurse, no pediatric hotline, no emergency room. You wet a cloth. You boil water. You pray harder than you've ever prayed before. And if the child stops breathing, you stop too and wait to see if they start again. If you're rich, you light the gas lights. You call the doctor if he's willing to travel. If you're middle class, you boil herbs. You write a letter for help that won't arrive until morning. If you're poor, you light a single candle and watch the body of your child as the chill of night takes over the room. And still, you don't cry yet, not until it's certain, not until the priest arrives, not until someone else says the word, gone. Death is a regular guest in Victorian home. He needs no invitation. He comes for the young, the old, the pregnant, the poor, the healthy, the stubborn, and he never leaves empty-handed. Even sleep itself is uneasy. You lie down in a bed shared with siblings, with children, with strangers if you live in a lodging house. There are no sheets, just a blanket or two that smells like a dozen other bodies. You itch, you scratch, you pray it's lice and not fleas. The mattress is straw, full of life you'd rather not think about. Mice rustle in the wall, Footsteps echo on the floor above. A door slams somewhere down the street. A window shatters. You don't close your eyes. Not yet. You listen to the creaks, to the gaslight buzzing faintly, to your own breath. And when you finally do sleep, it's not restful. It's not peaceful. It's survival. A pause. A dim fog that pulls you under until the cold wakes you again at dawn. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes you don't wake up. People die in their sleep, of fever, of hunger, of nothing really, just the weight of the world settling too heavily on one night. The Victorians have customs for this too. You stop the clock, you cover the mirror, you open the window so the soul can escape, you dress the body, light a candle, send a message to the priest. Someone sketches the body, someone else writes a poem. If it's a child, the neighbors bring ribbons and weep. If it's a parent, the children go silent. If it's a spouse, the other becomes a statue, wrapped in layers of black, their face unreadable. And if it's no one, you still light the candle, because death is not always personal, but it is always present. And so, you fall asleep, not with dreams of tomorrow, but with hope that you simply wake up at all, because in Victorian England, night is not a time for rest. It's a test, one you must pass again and again, every time the sun goes down. So now, here you are. You've made it through a full day in Victorian England, and not just the version from novels and museum tours, but the lived-in, worn-down, everyday experience of the real people who walked those gaslit streets, boiled those strange stews, and tried to make sense of a world that could be both cruel and beautiful in the same breath. And you survived. You woke in a cold, cramped room, wrapped in itchy flannel and layered with dust and the quiet presence of something alive under the bed. You washed with water so cold it numbed your fingertips. You dressed in layers that pressed your lungs into your ribs and called it fashion. You ate food that barely counted as nourishment. You worked hard with your back, your hands, your patience, your breath, and still came home exhausted and underpaid. You learned what it meant to live with death as a daily companion, not as a tragic exception, and yet they kept going. The people of that time of soot and silence, lace and labor endured, through loss, through grief, through absurd customs and terrifying ignorance. They buried their children and still found the strength to bake bread the next day. They lived without electricity, without medicine, without hope of change, and still managed to laugh. Sometimes even sing, and when they couldn't change their world, they decorated it. They filled rooms with patterns, covered tables in embroidered cloth, wrote letters, poems, hymns, told stories, took photographs of the people they loved even after those people had passed, because they wanted to remember, because they didn't want to let go. Yes, much of it was strange, even absurd. They feared mirrors, whispered to spirits, covered their mouths to avoid bad air, wore black for years to honor the dead, cried in secret and smiled in silence. But don't we all cling to rituals in our own way? They did the best they could with what they had. And what they had was very, very little. No clean water, no safety nets, no understanding of germs, trauma, or mental illness. And yet somehow 1 million ordinary lives stitched themselves together into the vast tapestry of an empire. One built not by kings or politicians, but by workers, mothers, maids, orphans, and street sellers who just kept waking up day after day and trying. So tonight, as you lie in your clean bed on a mattress that doesn't poke you with straw or groan with woodworm, take a deep breath. Feel the sheets against your skin, soft, warm, washed. The hum of electricity around you, the quiet safety of 4 solid walls, the miracle of medicine just a phone call away. A heater, if you're cold, a fan, if you're hot, running water, clean clothes, a light you can turn off with a switch. You do not need to rise at 4 a.m. to scrub someone else's hearth. You do not need to send your child to the chimney. You do not need to pray that your soup doesn't carry cholera. You can rest. You can let your muscles sink into the mattress. You can let your breath soften, deepen, slow. You made it through the smog, the morning jewelry, the death photography, the vinegar rinses, and the hair combs made from human teeth. You endured the etiquette, the silence, the boiled everything, and now you can let go, because that world is no longer yours. You visited it, you walked its cobbled streets, you saw its ghosts and swallowed its dust. But you don't have to live there, not anymore. Now you can drift. Imagine the gaslights dimming, one by one, the footsteps fading, the church bells quiet, the fog rolling in and tucking the world to sleep. A city curled beneath the weight of its own dream. Let your thoughts slow. Let the images melt away. Let your breathing settle like dust on a windowsill. You are safe. You are warm. You are home. And you will not wake in the Victorian age. No corsets. No soot. No morning veil. Just the deep, restful hush of night. So tonight, as you drift off, remember, you don't have to wake up in the 1800s. Sleep well,